How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. You are on High PSI TV, and we're in the shop today. The shop's empty, got all my little projects done, and what we're doing today is another welder review from YesWelder. A little background between me and YesWelder. We started our relationship over a year ago when they asked me to test out one of their plasma cutters. So since then, I've been using the plasma cutter up at RPM Motorsports, and it hasn't given me a bit of trouble yet. YesWelder's been a great company to deal with. Their tech support is great, and their products are readily available, so you can get them direct from their website. You can get them on Amazon, and they ship fast, and I've had a great working relationship with those guys for a long time. So what we're going to be dealing with today is a new welder that has just been released, and it is a 7-in-1 welder. So what that means is you're going to gain a lot of portability. You're going to gain a lot of ability to do different types of projects. So this can be geared towards a hobbyist like myself, a portable welder. So if you work on a farm and need to repair some equipment, this is something that you can bring with you out into the field. It's a really versatile machine, and I'm really excited to try it out. So what we have today is the Firstess CT2050. And this is their newest machine, just released, and this is their first 7-in-1 welder. All right, so here's our first look at the brand new welder from YesWelder. Really cool piece right here, the CT2050. Now, I unboxed this a couple days ago just to kind of familiarize myself with what we've got going on here. So this is the machine, and as you can see, it's rather small. Very portable unit, only weighs about 25 pounds. And this machine has the ability to do a lot of different things. So before we get into the accessories that it comes with, let's talk about what this welder is capable of. So when I say 7-in-1 capability, what this gives you is Tig Welding, AC and DC TIG, with AC pulse and DC pulse. This also is a stick welder and a non-touch pilot arc plasma cutter. So this thing will do TIG welding, stick welding, and plasma cutting all in one. Another really cool feature about this welder, you can see right here, built-in air compressor. So if you need to do plasma cutting and don't have access to an air compressor, say you're out in the field working heavy equipment, this thing has a built-in air compressor which will allow you to cut anything plasma out in the field. So before we get to working with this machine, I want to talk a bit about the technology that this machine has. Now, I'm going to throw some words out there, and I know a little bit about current and electricity and what they all mean, but let's talk about the technology that's inside this machine. So the inverters inside this machine are what make it really special. They smooth out all of your electrical arcs, so AC welding, DC welding, and it gives you a very nice constant voltage output and amperage output. So this machine, when we get to testing it, we're going to test out these different features and see what kind of arcs we're getting out of this Tig Torch. Now, for those of you that follow the channel, you know that I cannot arc weld. It's something that I never really got into. I'm sure if I tried it, I could make it happen, but that's not really my forte. So I've been welding for about 20 years now, maybe a little bit longer, and I consider myself proficient in TIG and MIG and plasma cutting. So that's what we're going to concentrate on this machine. Something else that this machine offers that I don't use very often because none of my machines have this technology is pulse TIG welding. So this can be used for a couple different reasons. The heating and cooling effect in your puddle will give you a different type of weld. It's also convenient for some people who are beginners. So what this will do is it will throw amperage and then pull it back in a pulse form. And what this does is allow you to heat your puddle, add filler rod, and keep moving down the line. The display on the front of this machine, which you'll see in a few minutes, is also really cool. There's a lot of information on it, and being not a precision TIG welder, I'm more of a hobbyist TIG welder. You know, I can do stainless aluminum, I can put all that stuff together, but I've never had the technology to actually fine-tune my arcs, which this machine you can do upslope, downslope, pre-gas flow, post-gas flow, and a bunch of other stuff to kind of fine-tune your arcs. So I have a bunch of scrap aluminum laying around, and I'm really excited to try this machine on aluminum to see how well it works. So in unboxing this machine, this is what I received to test with my beta unit. So I didn't receive everything that this welding unit is going to come with when it's released. When it is released, you can go to their website and they will list everything that the machine comes with, but it should come with everything that you need to really get rolling. So first thing I have is a gas hose, arc clamp lead. This is my work ground lead. I have some air hose here with a regulator and some fittings. This is nice and convenient, especially when you're using not the onboard air compressor, but your shop air. You can adjust the regulator and get the shop air set up where you need it. Next we have our plasma torch, and I do have one of their other plasma units, and this torch is actually really nice. I have a Miller plasma cutter, and I like this torch better. It comes with a little standoff cup, and it's really sturdy, so this will keep you from touching your work surface while you're plasma cutting. For those of you who have plasma cut before, you know that that can cause issues. They're really proud of their plasma cutting, so I'm excited to try this out too. I've got some thicker metal that we're going to try this out on. We also have our Tig Torch set up. Now this torch is big in your hand. Now this can be good and bad. If you're welding in tight areas, this may not be too convenient for you. But we have a thumb wheel amperage control, and this is your on-off switch here. So without a foot pedal, you can turn this torch on and then up your amperage. Now when I first started welding roll cages, I had a torch similar to this. And this is convenient when you're laid up in a car welding on a roll cage, because you can adjust the amperage and turn the machine on and off by hand. So you don't have to have a foot pedal somewhere rested up in the car and try to reach it. I've had problems before. I've had to have someone else work the foot pedal for me. So having hand controls on your Tig Torch is pretty convenient. They also are going to include consumables, which in this case we have some nozzles, some back caps, collets and ferrules, and the machine, when it's released to the public, will also come with some tungsten to help get you started. All right, I've just turned the machine on and I am familiarizing myself with this display, but you can see really nice display, easy to read. So what I'm going to be doing first on this machine is AC Tig. So here you can see all of our different options: AC Tig, DC Tig, stick, cut, and cut com, which is compressor. So this will be using the onboard compressor. So we're going to start with AC Tig, and I'm going to run through these settings the best that I know how, because like I said, I've never had the option to mess with any of this stuff before. But this machine does have a smart feature, which we will talk about a little bit more, but that opens up our screen over here, which gives us weld position and thickness of metal. So obviously we're AC welding right now, 1/8 inch metal on a flat surface. So this gives you a setup of where to start welding, and then you can fine tune from there. So we can turn our smart back off and make all the changes ourselves. What we're seeing up here is our start amperage, and this is our input voltage. So right now, just for setup, I have it hooked up to 120 volts. I'll be welding with 220 because the machine should be a little bit more stable at that point. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and start making all my connections to my Tig Torch. We'll build the Tig Torch, and then I'm gonna get out a table and we're gonna mess around with some aluminum. All right, so a little bit of a time lapse here. When I ended the video yesterday, I went inside, did some more research on this welder, and I've got it all hooked up to do some AC TIG welding today, which is where I left off yesterday. Got the Packard back in the garage. I let it get some sun yesterday, maybe a little bit of a tan. So what I've been doing this morning is playing with all the AC TIG settings that you can manipulate on this machine. And I've learned a lot. I think I've got it dialed in now. So I've just been playing with some scrap angle that I've got in here, trying to figure out what the machine likes and what I like, and learning the controls on this machine. Now what I'd like to do is spend some more time with this machine and learn the controls better before I can tell you how I think it should be set up. Now the smart feature on this machine does work, so I'm going to be using that in the video today, and then I'll manipulate a few of the settings so you guys can see the difference in the weld. I'm going to flip this piece of aluminum over, and then we'll lay down some beads. Before I really get rolling with welding, let's talk about the connections that we need to make on the front of this machine. So we'll start over here. This is your positive lead, which is a little confusing because this is where your earth ground clamp goes. So this to that clamp goes on your positive lead. Here we have our gas hookup. This red button here is for plasma cutting. This is our control port for the controls on our Tig Torch, and this is where the Tig Torch makes the connection on the negative side of the machine. The controls we're going to be using on the torch today are just this button. That is going to start and end our arc. On the back of the machine, all we have hooked up right now is our gas line on the top here to 100% argon, and our flow rate is about 15. So we're using a number 6 cup, which is provided with the Tig Torch. So we're going to sit down, and on the smart setting, we're going to run a few beads, probably 8 or 10 dabs of each. and then we're gonna start messing around with the frequency settings on this machine. Okay, our machine is on the smart setting for 1/8 inch. Also welding flat and 2T torch mode. So I'm just gonna run a couple beads real quick. Okay, so on the smart setting, you can see we are definitely able to weld aluminum. Now what I did before I welded this is I turned the amperage up. The smart setting on this machine had me at 85. I went up to 120. Definitely capable of making it happen. Now on the front of the machine, what we're displaying right now is our max amperage, and this is our input voltage. So with the touch of the red button in the center, we can sweep through and look at the different settings that we can change. So from the beginning, what I'm going to change now is just our frequency. So our frequency now is 85. I'm going to go up to 120, like so, and we'll weld a little bit more. Now it might be hard to tell on camera, but that bead is definitely a tighter bead. So I'm going to make a few more adjustments, and then we'll run another one. The last bead you see here, what I did was I turned the pulse frequency up to match the frequency of the weld. So they're both at 120 right now. The next step is I'm going to come back over here, and I am going to mess with the AC balance. Now discard this number because that is coming in my software update. They're making a change to it. So I'm just going to turn my balance up and see what kind of difference that makes in the weld. I don't really like the result of that weld, so what I'm going to do is turn my AC balance back down a bunch and see what difference that makes. Here we go. Back to where I think we should be. So I made a few more adjustments, and the bead is really getting to where I like it to be. Now, the point of this is, this machine does have a smart feature, and this is to help beginner welders get busy and start doing some aluminum welding, some stainless welding, and be able to make adjustments to your machine to help you weld better. So I've never had a machine where I could mess with AC balance and pulse and start arc and all that kind of stuff. Normally all my machines are just preset and you weld some stuff. So I really need to spend some more time playing around with this machine and figuring out the differences that all these little adjustments are going to make. But once I have some time to sit down, I'm going to review this machine again and tell you exactly what all these little changes I'm making are doing to my weld arc. So I'm going to run a couple more just for fun, and then we're going to move on to some different features of this machine. Now you'll notice the pitch change in all the different welds that I'm laying down, and that's because I'm changing the frequency, and I'm messing with it, trying to figure out what it does. I guess my main point here is there's a lot of adjustability in this machine, and it's going to really help you lay some nice beads down with aluminum. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some moves over here, and I'm going to change this up to do some DC welding. All right, so this is kind of fun. I've been messing around not using any filler material, trying to learn the settings in this machine again. So you can see now we're on DC TIG here, 2-touch mode, which means you have to hold the button on the torch in order for it to be welding. 4T mode, you press the button, it welds, you press the button again, it stops. Now, I just have some scrap stainless over here, so we're at 35 amps. The next setting that we're going to be looking at is says pulse hertz. And this is kind of working like aluminum. You can actually hear the frequency change when I change pulse hertz. So we're going to mess around with that a little bit, but right now we're set at 100. Next setting is duty cycle, which I don't ever mess with. Now, slope down. When you let go of the button, this actually lowers the amperage down to 5 amps over half a second, which is kind of cool when you're doing stainless. It leaves a real nice end bead. Post gas at 3, pre-gas at half a second, starting at 5 amps and sloping up over half a second. So if you look at this display, this is what you're getting. This is the arc in which this is working. Pre-gas, starting amperage, slope up, final amperage, slope down, stopping amperage, and post-gas flow. This is kind of neat. So I'm going to grab some rod and see what I can do with this machine and maybe make some changes along the way. Now I want you guys to try to notice, I hope you can see it. When I start the arc, it slowly increases, and then when I end it, it slowly decreases, which is a really neat feature. It's almost like having a foot pedal built into it. So here, working with stainless, I changed the frequency between these 3 welds, and it's kind of hard to see it, but we went from a really narrow bead to a much wider bead, and this is 100 hertz, 70, and then 50. So just making some small changes, but this thing will definitely weld stainless steel quite nicely. Now you might notice the lack of color in this weld, and that's mainly because of the gas cap that I'm using. It's a number 6. So if I had a gas lens or a Furic cup on this, you definitely have some more color out of the weld. So I'm going to run a few more real quick. Interesting results in playing with the slope up and slope down. Now you can see the little crater in the end of the welds. So what that means is I need to increase my slope down. So I'm going to do that real quick and run one more. And you can see on that last weld, no more crater. So my slope down would just be like you were backing off the pedal on a conventional machine. So enough TIG welding. Let's do something fun. Set this thing up for plasma cutting. All right, guys, we're back out here in the shop, and what we're going to do today is mess with our YesWelder Firstess CT2050, and we are going to be doing some plasma cutting with the built-in air compressor. So what we're going to look at first is air connections and torch connections on the machine. Okay, on the front of the machine, here's what we have for setup. So this is our total amperage here. So this will go between 45 and 12, depending on the thickness of metal you're cutting. That's going to determine your amperage. We're showing our input voltage here, which we're hooked up to 240 since we're going to cut something a little bit thicker. The rest of these settings I would leave as they come. So your pre-gas is going to be how long your compressor runs before you start cutting, and you're going to want that on for a few seconds to build up air pressure. Starting amperage, slope up, complete amperage, slope down, stop, and post gas. So what I'm going to do is cut in 2T mode. Now you're able to cut in 2T or 4T. The difference is going to be 2T, you pull the trigger and you're going to cut as long as your finger is on the trigger. 4T, you're going to pull the trigger, the compressor will start, you're going to lift off of the trigger, and you will continue cutting until you hit the trigger again. So 2T is going to be what I would consider your normal mode. 4T, maybe for hard to reach areas where you're not going to be able to have your finger on the trigger the entire time, but you're going to have to push the trigger again to stop it. On the front of the machine, we have our positive connection here, our trigger connection here, air connection here, and this is going to be our earth ground, which goes in the positive side of the machine. We have our regulator mounted, and this is our gas out port here, which is going to go into the regulator. Out of the regulator is going to go to our gas in on the back of the machine. So we're not going to use our gas port up here because this is for welding gas. So all we have back here right now is air lines. This is going to come with a regulator, which is adjustable. I'm going to try to run it about 60 psi, and also has a water trap in the bottom of it here. So on our table, we have our ground clamp hooked up, and we're going to make a few cuts with the onboard compressor and see how well it keeps up cutting thick steel. So you can see, no problem at all cutting this 1/4 inch steel. I have a little bit of slag on the back, so I'm going to try to move a bit faster on this next cut. Quarter inch steel is not a problem for the onboard compressor at all. I'm going to make one more little kind of weird cut, and then we'll move on. So you can see, guys, 1/4 inch, not a problem at all. Now I'm having to edit this video a little bit weird because I had to make some changes to the machine to make the onboard compressor work correctly. But I'm going to try to edit this piece in so that you guys can see what it's actually capable of doing. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the video. All right, so let's assume you're doing a set of floorboards in your 53 Packard. No problem for the onboard compressor at all. It seems to be cutting just fine. Something else weird again, your ground clamp goes to the positive side on this machine. So just be sure you have that hooked up correctly. What I think I'm gonna do now is go ahead and hook up shop air to this and see if we can't make it cut something thicker. You can see that cut pretty easy. Let the air stop. You can see that cut pretty easy, so I think it was more of an air pressure issue than an amperage issue. So I'm gonna make another cut. No problem at all on 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish cutting some of this off. Definitely handy. We've got plenty of cut, and you can even see where I went into the other side of the material. It was trying to blow all that stuff away, so not too shabby at all. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up this review. This is a beta test unit that I'm working with, so there were some challenges I had to overcome as far as setup of the machine and what the machine is capable of. There is no instruction set for this machine. There will be included when this machine launches. So what can it do? It can TIG weld, it can arc weld, it can plasma cut. It'll do 7 different processes, which for one machine is pretty incredible. So YesWelder is good about having a good instruction set, and the smart feature on this machine really helped me get started with welding aluminum, and then I could fine tune different settings as I went along. The DC TIG welding worked just like I expected it to. Everything went well. With a little bit of fine tuning, I was able to get the kind of weld that I wanted to get out of it. So if you guys are looking for an all-in-one hobby machine or something that you can carry with you that's very portable, this is definitely a machine to consider. I know there's going to be other review videos of this machine, so be sure you check those out as well. Maybe some people with a little bit more experience than myself with TIG welding. So I always said I can do it, I can make it look good, but as far as fine-tuning the machine to change the way that my weld looks or how the machine performs, I'm still a little bit of a noob. So my plan is to spend some more time with this machine, come out here on the weekends and play around with it and see what I can make it do. I have a feeling once that I get a little bit more comfortable using the different settings that I'll be able to use this machine in any situation. So for racers, you know, if you guys need a welder in your trailer for fixing stuff when you're on the road, when you're at different racetracks, this is a definite go-to. A lot of times all-in-one machines do one process well and the others just kind of lag behind. So be sure that you guys check out YesWelder. I'm going to have a bunch of links down below. Working with this welder has been a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time with this one and really tried to fine tune what I was doing with it. So hopefully this video is informative. And like I said, I've been working with YesWelder for over a year now, and all the machines that I have tested from them have worked well. I hope to continue my relationship with them, and I hope you guys can start a relationship with YesWelder. Check out everything they have on the website. I use one of their helmets every day at work. Love it. It's the panorama view, so I can really see what's going on when I'm welding, especially out of position. I can look around and see where I'm at. So be sure that you guys check me out on Instagram. I try to post up some of the stuff that I do there daily. A lot more cars than welders, but check it out. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.